Hi, this is Audrey Blair, and you're listening to the Change is Hard podcast, episode 19. Hi, and welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we are going to talk about something that every leader or everyone who's been in the workforce for a period of time, years, faces, and that is pivoting. And pivoting isn't just about making change for the sake of change. It really is about adapting so that you can continue to thrive. And if you want to continue to grow, it's a way for you to continue to do that. Sometimes it's about shifting when it's necessary. So making some of those necessary shifts. And it's also for you to think strategically about positioning yourself for the kind of growth that you want. And if you've ever felt stuck or uninspired or a little bored, if you're unsure about your next step, then keep listening. We're going to talk a little bit about it. This this particular topic is something I've been thinking about, and what pushed it over the edge for me was a conversation that I was having with a client. And she said to me, she said, "Well, I'm happy with where I am. I'm not interested in my boss's job. I've reached where I'd like to reach. I have a great team. I do great work. And the level of stress that I have right now is about all I want because I've got all these other things going on at home." And then she said, "But I know that in 5 years, this isn't where I want to be or what I want to be doing." And she's not ready to retire, but it's that from now until retirement, what does that look like? And it was a little bit interesting as we started talking more about it. And as I started asking questions about maybe making some plans for it. And at every turn, she would say, "Well, my oldest is about to go to college. And so we've got to plan for that. And I've got to wait until then." Okay. And then the next one was, "Well, but then the second one is coming up right behind the first one. And so maybe we've got to make some adjustments and wait for that." And then there was some other thing that was happening. And so then I looked at her and I said, "So you know this is not where you want to be in 5 years, but you're going to wait 5 years before you even think about what it is that you want to be doing at that time?" And it was a bit of an aha epiphany moment for her to consider that she was willing to push it off and push it off. And she was pushing it off because, one, she wasn't ready to think about it, and most people aren't, but also because it felt so risky. And pivoting can feel risky, it can feel uncertain. But at the same time, staying put can also be even riskier. Yeah, I've made so many pivots. I was thinking about, as I was putting this together, I was thinking about all the kind of big high level pivots that I have made, and both in my professional career and even just in the places that I've lived. And on one hand, sometimes I look at people that have been in the same place for years and years and years, and there is something to that. But I also find that the opportunity that I've had to live in various cultures and climates and different places has really also broadened my understanding of people. So I am originally from Ohio, and if you know me at all, go Bucks. And Hawaii is also what I consider my second home. My father lived in Hawaii, so I spent a number of summers there. I would go out and spend my summers there. So I consider that my second home and had spent a lot of time out there. And then eventually I did move out there. So when I left Ohio State, I moved out to Hawaii. Then I had an opportunity to move to Northern California, to San Francisco Bay Area, and I lived in the East Bay, and then I lived in a small town called Sausalito, which is in Marin County, which is on the opposite side, the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge from San Francisco. That's Sausalito. I mean, what an incredible place. Also, quite a bit of a bubble to live in. And then from there, made the move down to the heart of Silicon Valley in San Jose and actually lived in Silicon Valley during the heart of the dot-com boom and bust. So the original boom and bust. It's where I got married in San Jose. And then a year after that, my husband and I made the move to Southern California in LA. And we lived in Torrance. And then we moved to Long Beach, which I loved. And then his job brought us here to North Carolina. And so being able to experience so many different cultures and conditions and customs and values and beliefs and traditions and lifestyle really helped me for each move that I made. I had to pivot, take what I learned, and then apply that in all these new places. And I'm not saying that it's easy, but it was certainly something to consider, certainly something that we got used to. We've been here settled. Now this is all our kids know in terms of places to live, but it's been pretty amazing. And then on top of that, I've had several work pivots. My jobs have been across the board, various industries. I started out working in retail and corporate in retail. I was a database admin with very little experience right out of college. I learned one application that got me my next job in hospitality. I was an engineering assistant in a resort in Hawaii, which that was a fabulous job. I mean, come on, my office was right off the beach. I was out on the beach every day. I was in Hawaii. I was in a resort. So you're around people that spent so much of their time planning and wanting to be there. It was an incredible, incredible time for me. Then when I moved to the Bay Area in Northern California, I was like, well, I'm going to get out of IT and tech for a little while. And I became an event planner, and which was kind of random, but I always wanted to try and do it. I thought I was good at planning events. And so I took that job, and it was a commission only job. So I had to sell it, not only sell it, I had to sell my services. And then I also had to take what I got paid from the budget of whatever I got from the client, which that whole experience was pretty amazing. From there, I moved to a startup. Again went back into IT, so I thought, well, I'll go back, and I was a database administrator, which then led me into consulting, and then I pretty much stayed in IT software and services after that, and then niching down a little bit more into change management, and then finally making the leap to coaching. And so, as I was thinking about all of those various pivots that I made, none of them were super linear. And I realized that I had to really adapt who I was to the new role. And that was something that I always found exciting about making changes and trying different things. Not everybody is excited about that, but it was an exciting thing for me. And so, pivoting though is an opportunity for you to expand not only your skill set, but just even use what you do and who you are in a different setting and see the kind of impact you can make in that setting. And so when we think about it, talking about what pivoting really means, it's a way for you to go from maybe feeling a little bit stuck, but getting very really clear on what it is that you like and what it is that you want to do. Sometimes it can also be a way for you to move from underperforming to really accelerating in something that you enjoy doing. There are certain roles where I could tell that it was just right in line with who I was and I could accelerate quickly. And there were other roles where I was like, I'm just kind of trudging along here. And for me, if I'm doing that for too long, I know that I need to make a move. The other thing that pivoting can do is it can move you from questioning your path to making confident steps into new opportunities. So the more that you are flexible and the more ability you have to make those moves, you're going to be able to do it more confidently. I'll share two quick client stories with you. One I use a lot because I think he's just done so great. But one of my clients, great example, he came to me, he was feeling super trapped in his role. And he was successful on paper, but he was really unfulfilled in reality. And through working together, he was able to get really clear. He was able to refine what his goals were, and then we were able to help him to make some really big, bold steps together. It didn't start from, okay, now I know what I want, make a bold step. It wasn't that. There was a process and there was a transition and there were lots of things that we worked on in order to do that. But it did not take long. It saved him years into getting to where he is now. And so now he's a confident speaker. He has a blog. He has authored a book. He's doing great in his role at work. And so for him, his pivot wasn't just about a job title. In fact, while we did help him to make a move to another job, it really was about how he saw himself and what he believed was possible with his skill set. And now he's able to share his magic with lots of people, and it's really amazing to see. And then I have another client who similarly, she had been with a company and she's still with the company. She's in pharmaceutical industry. She had been on the science side of the business for many, many years. And she wanted to make a pivot to another part of the business and to have a different kind of impact in the business, and she had an opportunity. We helped her to get through the interview. She got the role. And now it's pretty amazing to see how aligned she is with what's important to her now. And she's thriving and doing great and is able to make a really great impact and a different kind of impact in that organization. And that had nothing to do necessarily with the pay raise or trying to climb the ladder. It was just resetting and realigning as they began and as they grew in their professions. They realized, okay, let's make some shifts here. And that's something that's possible and available for you. And it sometimes a pivot has nothing to do, again, with your role, but what can you do perhaps outside of that? So let's talk a little bit about some signs that you might be ready for a pivot. Okay. So, number one, here's how you know you might be ready for a pivot. You don't want another promotion or your boss's job or the C suite, or maybe you're already there. Let's just say that you already have reached the level that you want, or even beyond where you thought you could reach. But you also don't want to be in the same place several years from now. 5 years from now, you don't want to be there. So now is the time to start thinking about what's next. Number two, maybe work feels blah and you're going through the motions, but you really just aren't that excited anymore. It's time for a shift. It's time for a pivot of some kind. Number three, new opportunities just don't seem exciting for you. There aren't any new exciting opportunities for you. Everything just feels more of the same. It's the same thing over and over again. I don't know if you remember that commercial about the Dunkin' Donuts, time to make the donuts. Like at 4 in the morning, he would get up and go, time to make the donuts every day. It's kind of like Groundhog Day. Maybe number four, you're tired of your identity being tied to your role or your profession. This is a big one. This is the one where you reach a lot of people at a certain age, my age, late 40s, early 50s, where you start looking at yourself and going, "Wait, is this all that I am now? Is this role, this profession, this doctor or my title or," and I want to ask you questions. If you are afraid to move from being the who's who to who's that, it might be ready for you to make a pivot. Because if you're just hanging on to that identity because now you're the who's who and you don't want to change because you want to be able to walk into the room and everybody knows who you are, it might be time to make a move because that's not a reason to stay where you are. Number five, you don't know what you want to do next. You know that you're not ready to retire. And frankly, entrepreneurship isn't the answer for you either. Not everybody wants to go run out and start a business in their 50s like I did. I mean, not everybody wants to do that, but you know that there's something. Doesn't have to be jumping off and starting a business. It could be. You could take your skill set and start doing some consulting or some other things, but maybe that's not it. Number six, there's a void. There's something missing, but you can't quite put your finger on it. This was a huge one for me. This is the one where the last couple of roles that I had, I felt like I was chasing something that I just couldn't reach. It was like, there's this itch that I couldn't scratch. And I had gone the change management path. The company that I was at, they weren't really ready or interested in having a practice, and I really wanted to go and build a practice around that. So I moved to a company who said that they were ready to do that. Well, it turns out they weren't. And it just was something really different than what they said and where they said they were. So I knew really quickly, 3 months in, I knew, okay, this isn't it. This isn't going to work. And at that time, I could have said, well, I could spend the time searching and looking and trying to go to another organization. But I really, really wanted to get back into consulting, or I wanted to get back into building a business. And I had a friend who introduced me to coaching. I had no idea what it was. And it piqued my interest. And upon continuing to dive into it and learn about it, I realized that was it. That was the missing link for me. I could take all of my experience of working with all different kinds of people. I could take all of my experience in the various industries and roles and levels of leadership that I've had, and I can create a foundation and create a space for people to help them to take some of those same journeys, but to help them to get unstuck. And so in that moment, I didn't immediately just up and move and make a shift, but I started making a plan. And I started with a simple phone call. Researched some schools. I narrowed it down to my top 3 choices, and I called them up, and I chose the one that had the best answers that I wanted for what they were looking for in their students and what their program was about. And that was the first step for me. After researching, it was just making a phone call. And then I had to make the investment. It was a big investment, but I knew that I did not want to be where I was. For me, it was even 2 years later. I thought, I don't want to be here. Certainly 5 years, but for me, my timeline was much shorter. So I had to start making those moves. And it paid off great. It was probably one of the best decisions that I've ever made. Number 7, you're waiting for life circumstances to change. Like, oh, I'll wait until the kids are out and we're empty nesters. Some of us are in the sandwich generation. You might be helping parents as well. But by then, you may have wasted, and you are wasting very valuable planning time for what is coming next when they are out. Because by then what? Number 8, you're great at what you do, but you're bored with it. We've all been here. Sometimes a little bit of boredom is great. Sometimes I cherish those times when I know what I'm doing. It's boring. That's fine. But then sometimes it crosses over to where it's a different kind of boredom. And you're like, nope, this isn't working anymore. And then number 9, you feel uncertain about what's next, but you do know that deep down, staying where you are is not an option. And that was also the place that I was in. I was like, I'm not totally sure. I don't know exactly what this is going to look like, but staying where I am is absolutely not an option. So if any of those things resonate, it might be time for you to think about planning for a pivot, planning for something else that you want to do differently for you, for your life. If you listened to last week's episode where I spoke to Kristen Hubler, the author of The Impossible Box, we talk a lot about unpacking some of those goals and some of those desires and some of those things that we've packed away for so long, getting them out of storage and start working on them, but they won't work themselves. So, how do we do this? How do we start even thinking about it? Because it seems a little bit uncertain. It seems risky. It might seem a little bit overwhelming. And there's ways to think about it. So I'm going to give you maybe 5 steps that you can think about how to pivot. And as I said, pivoting is not about making impulsive decisions. It's about intentional shifts that align with your long-term vision and goal and where you want to end up. So here's some ways that you can approach it. The first thing and the very important thing is you have to ask the right questions. And you start with, what do I want? Don't start with what I don't want. Answer the question, what do I want? What excites me? What do I need more of? Or maybe what do I need less of in my life, whether that's personally or professionally? I knew that I couldn't answer exactly. I didn't have a specific vision about what I wanted, but I did know that I wanted more freedom. I wanted more flexibility. I wanted autonomy. I wanted to learn how to build something again from scratch. I didn't want to have a ceiling over me telling me how much money I can make. So, those are some elements that I knew that I wanted that I didn't have. And so I had to start planning for it. So, then the next step is you want to get very clear about what your goals are. So, here's where I think people get messed up. They're like, well, I don't have a plan. You don't need a perfect plan. You just need a direction. And it's almost like, if I can use maybe a sailing analogy, if you imagine if you're sailing toward a destination, but if the wind isn't going in your favor, instead of going in a straight line, you have to adjust your sails and you have to change direction. And it's a series of controlled movements. It's called tacking. And you're still moving forward towards your goal, but you have to shift and navigate some of the obstacles along the way. And pivoting kind of works in the same way. It's about making those intentional adjustments rather than waiting for the perfect conditions or the perfect circumstances, because they will never create themselves, right? So the third thing is experiment with small moves. Try some new skills, take on a different project, or explore maybe something adjacent to your field to see what resonates. When I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how maybe another analogy, I don't, if you cook or if you bake, I remember a few weeks ago when we came back from our holiday, I hadn't gone shopping, and for Sunday dinner, I wanted to bake a cake. But I only had 2 eggs and I needed 3, and I was not gonna go to the store for a single egg, and there was probably something else I didn't have, but I was like, "I'm just gonna make something up. I'm gonna make some adjustments." And I saw that I could substitute a quarter cup of mashed bananas in place of the egg, and oh my gosh, it was amazing. It added another layer of flavor to the cake. It also helped to keep the cake moist and delicious, and everybody had great compliments for this cake that I threw together that I didn't even have all the ingredients for. And so, one, I not only did I learn something, but two, I realized that I didn't have to just throw the whole recipe out, or I realized I could still do it. I didn't have to throw everything away. And it's like that. Sometimes you are trying to make something and you don't have that one ingredient. One of the ones that's always a sticking point for me is buttermilk. I mean, you buy buttermilk and then it goes bad because you need like 2 tablespoons. But if you have milk and vinegar, you can make buttermilk. If you have yogurt, if you have milk and lemon juice, like you can create your own combinations of something and just make some of these smaller pivots and small moves, and it can do some incredible, incredible things. I digress. All right. So, number 4, seeking guidance. Get a coach, work with me, work with someone else that can create a space for you to talk about some of these things that you have not talked about for a very long time. This space is so important for you to explore some of those things, because some of your ideas you might think are silly, but so what? Even if they are, you still need to be able to talk through them and think through some of those things. Maybe you have a mentor or a trusted advisor that can help you see some of the blind spots and help you to move forward with confidence. Whoever this person is, though, they also have to have the ability to ask you very powerful questions. They have to have the ability to challenge some of your thinking, because you're going to want to stay, it's going to get uncomfortable, and you're going to have reasons why not to do something. And you want to have someone that can help you and can be objective and very neutral. They don't have any skin in the game to really to talk you through some of these things. And number 5 is to take some bold steps forward. We know that growth requires action, and once you are clear about what you want to commit to that, and then even taking a small step toward a new path. Like I said, for me to get to where I am now, it started with a simple phone call. And I made that call and I got the information that I needed. And then I was able to make the next step and make the decision and commit. And then once I committed, Then I put in the time. Once I put in the time, I learned a new skill. Once I learned a new skill, I had to decide what I was going to do with that skill. So don't think that you have to make all the decisions immediately and right now. It's only make the decision that's right in front of you. And it will lead you somewhere unexpected sometimes. Or if you know exactly where you want to go, it can lead you right there as well. So for you, where do you need to pivot in your life or specifically with leadership right now? What are some of the next steps that you can take to move from being really uncertain or not willing to take a risk to really moving forward to taking that risk? All right. So, if you're listening on Spotify, you can drop your thoughts in the comments. Or if this resonates with you, please reach out, schedule a time with me. I'd love to work with you. I'd love to help you to navigate your next pivot. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And if this episode has been helpful for you, please do subscribe and share it with someone you think might want to hear it. And don't forget to follow along. All right. Thank you again for showing up, and I will see you next time.